Hello, folks. This week we're focused on the South and on antebellum slavery. And I was recently asked about what the connection is between slavery and the environment. And uh, I would say there's actually several ways in which the two topics are connected. Um, One of them involves the hunger on the part of Southern planters to acquire more and more arable land. The tobacco boom that had started back in the 1600s in Virginia and Maryland finally began to die out by the 1760s, 70s, 80s. And many of our founding fathers really believed that the slavery system, which they recognized was not really compatible with democracy, that the slavery system might well sort of die out all on its own, that economically slavery would no longer be viable. And then, of course, our friend Eli Whitney, your textbook explains he's not even a Southerner, he was from Connecticut. Eli Whitney was visiting friends in the South, and he invents the cotton gin, which gives slavery in America a new lease on life. And the slave economy takes off in the early 19th century. But it turns out that cotton was even more exhausting of the soil than tobacco had been. And so if you look at maps that show the Southern Cotton Kingdom starting in like the 1790s, and then decade by decade how it advances, what you see is that the focus of cotton production starts in the Southeast and it moves progressively westward. And so there is a direct tie between the hunger for more land to produce this staple crop that's so profitable, a connection between the need for land and the exhaustion of acreage back east. As cotton producers wore out their land in places like the Carolinas, they gradually move westward and acquire more and more territories. That ties to Indian removal in the age of Jackson. One of the primary reasons that people in states like Georgia and Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, they want the Native Americans out because they need the land. And of course, to make that land profitable, you need a labor force, and that's where slavery comes in. And so the two are closely tied to each other. I would also point out that the Northern economy in that period, through industrialization, is also tied to slavery because what are the Northern textile mills turning into cloth? Fiber that's coming from the South, that's produced by slave labor. Another connection to slavery and the environment has to do with the culture that develops in the slaveholding South. Southern states become dominated by wealthy planters who make up sort of the top social strata. In Virginia, they're the first families of Virginia. These are all wealthy planter clans that connect to each other by marriage. And if you are a Southern planter, traditionally in the South, these are people who are expected to live lives largely of idleness. The slaves are out there performing the labor, and a Southern gentleman is supposed to preside over his land like a feudal baron. And much of his time would be spent in entertaining visitors that come to his plantation. There's also generally pursuits like, horse racing and other things that these wealthy people do. What they are not, though, is by our modern definitions, good businessmen. In fact, it's commonplace that Southern planters would kind of brag about I have no idea how much money I have, or I have no idea basically about really sort of the profitability of my business. The reality is that in the South, where status is connected to showing off how opulent, how extraordinary my plantation mansion is, or my fancy clothing, or all the other possessions that go into maintaining that status, many Southern planters are actually deeply in debt. And a lot of people know that Thomas Jefferson, who owned like 160 slaves or more, no, it's over 200 in his case. I was thinking of Andrew Jackson owns roughly 160 slaves, but Jefferson didn't just own Monticello, he owned other plantations in Virginia. And on the business side, he dies deeply in debt. He did not manage his business as well. And if you're not managing your business well, you can bet that a lot of Southern planters are not actually taking care of the land very well either. And they're not. They're interested in short-term profits. Many of them will burn out the nutrients in their soil, and then they simply acquire new acreage. And that's why the Cotton Kingdom moves west, is that it's leaving a trail of wreckage in terms of exhausted soil in its wake. So hope you folks have have had a good week and are going to have a good weekend. And I'll talk to you folks later.